All right, so thank you, Rep. Jordan, for the opportunity to come and speak. And always good to be with the folks over on the West Bank. Many of your legislators who you heard from today, including your mayors, all have direct access to me, whether it's on the committee or whether it's just reaching out on a cell phone or just having conversations in the course of work. So they are very involved. And if you looked at my phone, you'd see text messages and or missed calls or return calls from them where we talk on a regular basis when issues come up. So I want to thank them for their work, as well as both of our congressional offices. Paul and I have known each other for a long, long time. And if they had done all the transportation projects when he was there last time, he had no problems, but that didn't happen. And it wasn't just Paul's fault, it wasn't any individual's fault, it's a collective of where we've been in this state with how we funded infrastructure. I'm going to give you kind of an overview of what we have going on the West Bank, and I know you're going to have questions, some that we've addressed in public meetings in different parts of this community, some we've addressed on the Frustrated Commuter website on Facebook, some that we've addressed when people have called at all hours of the morning and or night. So got a couple of projects. First, I'm going to give you a status of kind of what's underway, and then I'll talk about what's coming and projects that you can look forward to, not necessarily just the big I-10 project, but there's so much out there. Before we begin and give you that project update, you should know that we have more resources at our disposal now than we have ever had in the history of the State Department of Transportation. In part because of what was called CRISA, which was Coronavirus Aid, the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure law has poured billions of dollars into infrastructure of all manner that will affect highways, roadways, waterways, planes, trains, automobiles, you name it, we're in that business. And so not only that, the legislature, for the first time in about 33 to 34 years, gave us recurring revenue up to the amount of somewhere close to $150 million guaranteed, and it will grow to about $250 million a year on projects that we've spent, not necessarily salary, but projects, and there's a part of that workforce challenge. And then on top of that, you also have the BP dollars, and the department has gotten real efficient in achieving extra dollars, whether it's discretionary dollars, whether it's redistribution dollars that we have worked immensely hard. Over the last 12 years, we've collected about $630 million in redistribution. About 435 of that has come since this administration got in office, and most recently we got $100 million that we asked for, $97 million that we asked for, and we're successful at achieving. So I'm pretty excited about where we've been and what all we have. So I said all that to tell you that there's a lot more coming than what's been done. There's a lot more coming than what's been done. And that simply means everybody wants progress, but very few people like construction zones. Very few people like the process. Very few people understand the details that have to go into delivering it. And just before the meeting, we talked about how do we manage expectations. And one of the things that you will look back and say over my career, I hope that you will be able to say that I've never avoided a conversation. I've always been forthright, giving you honest, factual data, and we're always going to engage and be responsive to you as best we can. And so let me jump into some of these projects, and then we'll be happy to entertain some of your questions in the course of it. First is the LA1 pavement preservation project. I know we've talked to some folks already about the frontage road here in this stretch, but this is the main line of LA1. It's about a $12 million project. It's got asphalt and concrete patching on LA1, and it goes from the Intercoastal Bridge to LA 75 south of Plaquemine. It's a project that you already see. Crews are currently concrete patching the northbound lanes, and they still need to lay a binder lift in the left lane and the wearing course across the entire set of lanes. This project is going to be completed in September, weather permitting. If you go out and look at the grass in your yard or on the public right-of-ways, you'll see that grass is growing because it's been quite wet. We can't get out and cut grass as frequently as we like, but not only is that a problem, but it disrupts our construction zones as well, because they have to wait until they have a stretch of weather that will be accommodating for them to work. And so when we give you dates, recognize that on average, our projects are off by about 15 to 20% in days just because of rain. We live in South Louisiana, and that is a challenge. And so we mitigate and manage that as best we can. This is estimated to be completed in September. We have cross-drain repair in the southbound lanes that will cause some one-lane closures. And this is going to take 2 to 3 days, but we should be back there if we can get good windows of weather to work. And then we've also done a change order repaving the northbound and southbound service roads, and that's going to be completed in 23, weather permitting. And so, unlike in other projects where you start off with that scope, you can sometimes change order some things in that allows you to go faster if you have what's called the typical section. And we've been able to do that, and I do not have the perimeter or the end points and beginning points for the frontage roads, but we did do a change order, and that's going to take place until 2023. One of the projects that is super important is the bridge projects that you see across the state of Louisiana. And we've got over 12,000 bridges here in the state. We've got about 3,000 bridges that are load posted. We've got some bridges that are older than 75 years old that are currently still working. And so imagine what that means for your budget. It means I've got about $3 billion of about $14 billion in bridges. And it also means that we've got the 4th largest bridge deck area in the country. Not just in the South, not just on the Southeast, but across the entire country. There are only 4 states. There are 4 states that have this many bridges. 3 of them have more bridge capacity or bridge deck than we have. And we flip between 3rd and 4th depending on who's closed a bridge or not, and how long that bridge was, and how wide that bridge was. So that means there's an exponential cost, there's an exponential impact on the concrete, and in an environment where you have things like the supply chain, steel, concrete, transportation, all of those are factors that are showing us about a 25 to 35% increase on just about every project that we try to manage. But you have a project here on the LA1 Intercoastal Bridge. This is a huge project for us. This is something that we can tell you we've been working on. I committed to doing this back in 2016 to get the ball rolling on it. Because we are able to go out and find some of those extra dollars, we were able to move some things to make it happen. And so we've got it awarded in 2 phases. The first phase is going to handle the southbound, and then the next phase is going to have the demolition of the existing bridge, and then the construction of the remaining bridge. Phase 1 began on April 8th of this year, and it's anticipated to be completed in the summer of 23, weather contingent. We mentioned every time you pass there, you see tremendous progress. You have one of the best companies in construction. While we like all of our construction industries, Kiewit does a phenomenal job on bridge projects. They are a company that will go out and bring every piece of resource they have. They are known to finish in advance, ahead of the schedule, when there's an incentive or not, so we're pretty excited about them. And this is a $57 million project. To put in context, when I became secretary, we were spending just $110 or $120 million on bridges per year across the entire state of Louisiana. So to get a $57 million bridge here is significant. We're only up to about $190 million in bridge money right now in a year. You've got $57 million, and that's only half the bridge. So keep in mind, I don't get the joy of being just the Secretary of Transportation for West Baton Rouge or for District 61, the capital region. I've got the entire state of Louisiana, and the legislature is very much aware of what that juggling process is like. We're going to be replacing the current southbound bridge with a brand new bridge that you see happening on the west side of it. The Ernest Wilson Drive leading over to the Port LA1 is going to be realigned to connect to this new bridge. And then vehicles will remain on the current alignment during construction. And so what's good about this project, the reason we can go very fast, is we have what's called the green field. And that green field says I can work without having to manage traffic. Imagine moving cranes with big steel concrete girders in traffic. It's very difficult. That's an important factor to remember when we talk about the I-10 bridge project and what you get with a green field. If you've ever done a home, if you built a house, you know how long it takes. If you redo a house, it takes a lot longer depending on the scale and scope of the work. And it's hard to have to live in it when you redo it. The kitchen and the bathrooms are the absolute worst. Every transportation project is like a kitchen and a bathroom when you have to rebuild it. And so recognize that those are some of the challenges, but this project is going along quite well. During construction, there was going to be 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. And in phase 2, we're going to tear down the northbound bridge and build the new structure in phase 2. The southbound and the northbound will be torn down simultaneously, and that's scheduled to go to bid next summer. Now, I do not have 100% of the money today, but we are committed to leaning forward in getting these projects done because that is absolutely critical, and it's estimated to be completed in 2026. Now, the dynamics of these projects is, do you wait to do it later, or do you do it when you have the money? Had we done it 25 years ago when it should have been done, we wouldn't be here today. Waiting, it's only going to cost more the longer it takes. And if I only have that $87 million or whatever that cost is going to be, if I wait 5 years to try to hang on to it, I'm not going to have enough money. And I don't care which contractor you are, you're not going to take 80% of the money and start building it without that certainty. So it's going to bid in 2023. Once the entire project is completed, we'll have a new southbound bridge that has 3 12-foot lanes and 10 2-foot shoulders, and a new northbound lane bridge with 2 12-foot lanes and a 10-foot shoulder, and a barrier-separated exit lane for I-10 eastbound to minimize the merges. That's a really big issue here with folks jumping in line and cutting traffic. It will have a positive barrier to prevent that from happening. It's important to note that you're going to stay on this main line while we are building this bridge. Once this bridge is completed, all of the traffic is going to move to the new bridge so that we can make way for another green field to rebuild the northbound lane. And that's going to be the structure of that. We are submitting an application for the funding to help close the gap. I know I've brought this to Congressman Carter, and he's been very receptive as a former senator and a current congressman who's also on transportation. I know Congressman Graves has been aware of this, that we're submitting for a bridge grant for that northbound piece to make sure we can close the gap and deal with inflation. And those applications are going to be due in a couple of days. So we're excited about that for the LA1 Intercoastal Bridge. It is going to be huge. It's going to be transformative. It was our hope, and we can tell you back in 2016, we attempted to escalate and expedite the LA 415 connector so that we can move all the traffic over to 415 to get it done. But prior to that time, enough work had not been done on the 415 bridge to be able to make that a reality. And we had to proceed in that fashion. There's also the I-10 College exit ramp project that's happening. It's on the east bank of the river. It's going to complete in fall of 23. It does not necessarily directly impact the West Bank, but it does impact the safety of what happens for folks that are going to the 1012 School or to college and coming back, because we've got an X merge right now, and we're eliminating that, and we're doing it to add additional capacity, both in terms of shoulders and main line, and that project is about a $52 million project that we're adding as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mississippi River Bridge, the new Mississippi River Bridge, the new Mississippi River Bridge, I should say. You should know that we held 6 public meetings, and at the end of April, early May, we did several location studies, and we had over 2,200 public comments that were reviewed and responded to and factored into in the decision-making process. 10 alternatives were presented to the public, and we narrowed that down to 3 alternatives. All 3 of them are located in Iberville Parish. And it's important to note that some people say, well, we want it here, we want it there. We get that. We looked at the data, we looked at the science, we looked at the traffic models and said, this is the best plan. When we don't do that, we spend $500 million and have less than 2,000 cars a day on what's called the Audubon Bridge. That is the best example of why we follow the rules and do it the right way. It's a beautiful bridge. It wasn't the place where DOTD said to build it. It was a legislative process, but it wasn't based in traffic data, it wasn't based in growth, and so we recognize that. So that's why we came to those conclusions. And over the next 2 years, we will narrow that down to a singular location and then proceed with our environmental process to manage that. Please recognize that the government the state of Louisiana, this governor, we asked to put $500 million toward that bridge. The legislature ultimately came up to put $300 million on that bridge. And then the department also worked with the legislature for what was the vehicle sales tax that Senator Ward worked very hard on to pass. When he passed it the first time, there wasn't a whole lot of clarity on it, but we were able to dedicate $40 million a year to that project. That's going to go a long way to give us the tools to be able to finance a project that we have not heretofore had any money for to deliver. And that project is going to be upwards of $2 billion at the end of the day when you add the improvements to LA1 and 30 and the crossing that's at that footprint. And so those are some very important big projects that's there. Let me just tell you, since 2016, we spent about $120 million in West Baton Rouge, covering about 181 miles, 36 projects. And that's good news, because there's more coming, as I said. There's more ahead of us than behind us. And so the parish is going to be working with us to, we've already done a permit to remove a connection on the service road with LA1 northbound. That's going to help with the traffic improvements. We have a project that's going to be let in November of this year that's going to have to do with queuing of traffic on I-10. It's going to be a queue detection and queue warning system, which is going to be huge for safety, because we've lost more lives last year, more lives this year than we've done in the last 20 years on highways across the state of Louisiana. And we know where we have challenges, and we're making steps to be able to improve that. Last year we had 2.7, 2.8 people die per day. That's every day of the year. 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 people, depending on how you round up. And so safety is a huge issue for us. The LA1 415 connector is a project that has money on it today, compliments of the VP bill. And as I mentioned to you, that project was not ready. Some wonderful things have happened in that footprint that create jobs, but when those jobs sit in the path of the bridge, that causes delay. When you build tremendous subdivisions and have all that activity, it changes the footprint. We have to go back and do some environmental work, and that's where we are today. We expect to complete the environmental work next year. We have already identified the designer, and early next year we will design the contractor, and we will let that project to go to construction to connect LA1 to 415. So that project is actually funded and in the path of the future. And then you should also know that we've got some another lane pavement preservation on LA 96 on LaFontaine Lane, Lifton Lane. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Lifton Lane from LA 986, about 1 mile past LA 1, and that's going to let late next year. And then the last thing I'll tell you before I get into the I-10 project, we've also been able to fund a couple of things. You're going to see and hear about $150 million, is it, Josh, in the preservation program? We were able to use some of the one-time money we have, and we are working with the legislators in each district to do preservation work, which is the basic asphalt type work, preserving bridge work or preserving pavement. And there's about $150 million that's going to be spent. Each DOTD district comes in at somewhere in the neighborhood of $22 to $27 million that is going to be spent. And then we're even going down a step further and saying we're not going to just spend it in this district, but there's some parish requirements as well. So that each parish, the legislators are going to be able to help identify some quick projects that are not funded this year, not funded next year, but will accelerate them. And we're excited to be able to do that. We're going to try and follow the basic principles of our highway priority program, but we're going to look to the legislators to make those decisions for those finite dollars. That's going to be pretty important. And then the last thing before I talk about the big project, it's going to be, we're going to spend another $280 million on off-system bridges that are owned by the parishes as a result of the major infrastructure bill that was passed. That's big dollars going to bridges that are owned by the locals. When you heard me talk about 12,000 bridges, about 7,000 of them are locally owned bridges. And we're going to be working with the locals to be able to build and improve those bridges, whether it's a repair, whether it's converting it to a culvert, or if it's a complete replacement. It's going to make a difference, because if you're growing rice or soybeans and you have a truck and your load posted, guess what? You can't use that bridge. If you use that bridge, you're putting people in harm's way. And so we're going to be investing in anywhere from 300 to 400 bridges with that money that the state of Louisiana does not even own. But we're working with locals to be able to identify that and spend that. And then you're going to have another close to $600 million spent on state-owned bridges that's out there. So there's a lot happening. Those are the formula dollars. That does not include discretionary dollars that we intend to compete for. So let's talk about the I-10 project. That's what most of you probably came to hear and talk about. This is a project that was attempted to be done in previous iterations of government in the state of Louisiana, whether it's governors, whether it's mayors, or whether it's just constituents. This is a project that's been attempted at least 2 times, even a third, depending on how detailed you want to make it, and it has never gotten off center. As a result, traffic has gotten progressively worse. We've often said at the department that you don't just need to widen I-10, you need a new bridge. You need to widen I-10. You need some better connectors across this region. It's way more than just any one silver bullet that's going to solve traffic problems here in the capital region. I will also tell you that the infrastructure that was previously built is only half the problem. There's a part of this challenge that we have, it's called land use, and where we decide to build, and who we give access to, and how that works. And we just have to react to that. So I don't get a chance to say, no, Amazon, you can't go here, you go here. 600 homes, you go here, not here. Those are local government decisions. And so we see this all across the state of Louisiana. We see it with the placement of schools. They find places, I can show you almost every region, they build a school on a 2-lane road and come say, okay, you got to fix the road. Well, if you redesign the school, if you coordinated a little bit better, maybe that wouldn't happen. So half the problem is that there's so much development in this region, there's so many jobs out there, and so much more can happen. And so there's a reality that's facing us is that most of the interstate system is as old or older than I am, and I'm 52. Most of the interstate that you see across the state of Louisiana is beyond its useful life. You see it right here in Baton Rouge, in terms of the quality, in terms of the design standards, in terms of the way it's maintained, in terms of the way it's impacted communities. And so either we take responsibility to convert something that we know is deteriorating at a much greater rate than a new infrastructure would, and be succumb to the conditions, or you can control your own destiny and make those repairs. And so the department, as we have attempted in the past, have decided to proceed with it. And so we have a fully funded project in terms of this first phase, which goes from the bridge to the I-10, I-12 split. There are projects that are currently under construction. That's a part of this overall package. The college project is under construction as a part of this. The Acadian Underpass, it's a part of this. It's under construction today. And we've been working on this since 2017, 2018 with our Garvey package. It was about $650 million in Garvey that we put out. About $400 million was on this project. And just to give you the idea of inflation and cost materials and the escalation, we're probably going to be double that just for this first phase. So it's a very expensive undertaking. So what's going to happen in this corridor? In addition to the projects you see right now, you have the first early works package, which is going to create a duct bank. That duct bank is going to move all the utilities through that corridor in one concentrated location. Imagine that. Had we built the interstate the first time, we would have put all of the fiber optics, all of the drainage, all of the utilities, gas lines, water lines, all of that should be in one concentrated area. That's not the case today. That's not the case anywhere that you have. So when you maintain it, guess what? You're maintaining it here, you're maintaining it there, and then you're going to have patchwork here, patchwork there. That's going to be eliminated with this project. The next phase of this project will be to build temporary construction on the westbound side. We have to widen it to be able to put additional traffic on it. And when this project started, we knew it would be long, but we had a couple of things we wanted to do. We wanted to be safe, we wanted to be affordable, we wanted to be efficient, and we want to meet the design standards that's going to have the least amount of impact on the community. And so we could have gone through and bought up an additional 50 feet on each side, or additional 100 feet on one side, and we would have changed the trajectory of Baton Rouge, and that's not where we wanted to be. We also would have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars buying right-of-way and not have any money to build anything once you acquire the right-of-way. You can go to 3127 right now in parts of this state and see where we cleared it, grubbed it, and never built the highway. We didn't want to do that here. Not to mention, you've got hundreds of thousands of cars that travel through this region. So that's the second phase. The third phase is going to be creating what's called the greenfield. And that's where the pinch is going to be. The greenfield is taking down the entire stretch of the East Bank from where you merge at 10110 all the way to Acadia. Now, what's the difference? Had we not done the greenfield, the construction time to go from that same location just to the lakes, to the other side of the lakes, was going to take 8 years. That's 8 years of construction of fits and starts in 2 lanes. It was going to cost us $50 million more just on paper. That doesn't include the real escalation of what happens with gas and fuel and all of those things. It also would have been 8 hurricane seasons. It would have been 8 football seasons. It would have been 8 special event seasons. It would have transitioned 2 governors. And that just did not make sense financially. It didn't make sense delivering it. And so we looked and we've heard those cries and said, look, traffic is bad. It is bad. It's bad today. We talked before this that it might take an hour to cross that bridge. There's nothing I can do to shorten that hour in that footprint without doing what we're doing. Because if we did nothing, in 8 years, you'd have the same thing. It'd be worse. And so ripping the Band-Aid off for a year and 2 months, 1 hurricane season, 1 football season, is what happens. And so we will move traffic from the eastbound side to the westbound side, and we will have a lane reduction. And right now, today, you have 1 lane from the bridge to I-10, and you have 1 lane from the bridge to 110. You will still have that. What you will not have is the exit lane, because we have to rebuild that. That's that area by Washington Street. So we have to take all of that down, 1, because it's old and it's not going to be able to be maintained as well, as long in the future. And we're going to rebuild it all at once. And so that 1 lane is going to split the flyover on the westbound side. And that's going to be that 1 place where you have that pinch for that 1 year, 2 months. And then after that, you're going to be back to the same level of capacity you are today, just like you are going to be on the LA1 bridge with all of the lanes on the newly built side, while we do the same thing on the other side. This entire project is slated to be done in 4 years. And here's who's building it. The same people who are building this bridge is the principal contractor on this project. Bow Brothers, a 100-plus-year-old Louisiana company, the same one that's building the I-10 College interchange improvement, is on this project. James Construction, another Louisiana company. It's currently owned and operated under the brand of Primars. They've built a great deal of the widenings you see on I-10 and the bridges you see. They're building the LA1 project down in Golden Meadow. 3 of the best big civil constructors that you have in the state of Louisiana are all working on this project. So not only do we build it faster, we disrupt businesses and families 1 time instead of over an 8-year period. Imagine what the impact is to the way of life for businesses and families throughout that footprint. Because it was going to be bad for those 8 years, not much worse than it is going to be for that year's window when we're down to that narrow constriction. And so, what are we going to do to address that and minimize that? 1, we've got capacity on the old bridge today that people choose not to use for various reasons. You've got LA1, you've got 415 with signals, and you've got a commitment, and the state is working to be able to address timing of signals to maximize throughput. We are going to do the same thing on airline. We're going to do the same thing on Florida, where you provide as many alternate routes as you possibly can, because we've done the mesoscopic study to tell us where traffic is likely to go.
because we can't be 110% sure. I can't tell you that we're going to be 90% sure, but all we have is the models that will help us make those best informed decisions, and we're going to be nimble. Because traffic and people find the path of least resistance. And that path of least resistance might be going to the old bridge. That path might be going to Sunshine for some folks. That path might be leaving earlier and taking the same path you have today. And so, not only are we looking at this core footprint for this project, you will have signs as far out as Hammond and as far west as Lafayette and Opelousas communicating to people on their phones, on their dynamic message boards, to advise them of the time difference and the delay. You're going to have Amazon, who we're talking to, and everybody else, and all the plants that we've talked to talk about how do you move trucks and where do you move trucks and when you move trucks. And you have the entire state of Louisiana that's going to be converting to a 4-day work week to minimize the traffic that's in that corridor, because the vast majority of traffic that you see in this footprint comes from within this footprint. The east bank or the west bank of the river. From Ascension and Livingston, Iberville, West Baton Rouge, Point Capee, those are where the vast majority of the traffic is coming from. And then the last thing I think that we will do, and we're working on finalizing this, is to be able to prioritize that we have lots of capacity. You've got 300 miles of interstate, guaranteed footprint on the interstate across Louisiana, across the country. That's a different place to have traffic than it is on LA1. Will there be traffic on LA1? Yes. Was there traffic on LA1 this morning? Yes. Was there traffic on LA1 this afternoon? Yes. But after it's all said and done, and Pee Wee said it best, it's going to be painful as we go through this. But at the end of that 4-year window, there's going to be tremendous relief in throughput and feasibility to be able to move on with the rest of the project, which includes widening on this side and changing the interchange at LA1 with the new bridge capacity that we're going to have across the intercoastal canal. And then the question that we often get is, why not the bridge first? Well, the bridge is going to take 10 years. Now, it could take a little less, it could take a little more, but remember, I got $300 million for the bridge. We have not cleared environmental on the bridge. We're on schedule. We're actually under budget in that planning process. But these are things that hadn't been cleared previously. We would be in a much better place. If I had confidence that we could build that within the time frame, we would have built that first. Just like we'd have widened LA1, just like we'd have widened I-10. And politics have priorities. And there were situations where someone said, look, let's not work on the bridge. Let's go widen I-12. And guess what we have to do? Because we implement policy. Governor Edwards says, let's fix this problem. And had we been committed to this for the last 30 years, not just with policy, but with resources, we'd be in a different place today. But as I said when I started, there's more ahead of us than behind us. And if the policy is right, and we believe it is, if the funding is there, and we believe it is, and the will and the commitment to really do the hard things, because if it was easy, my friends, it would have been done already. And I've commuted to Baton Rouge since 1998 from Lafayette, and I've traveled the state. There's projects like this in every region. I can show you I-49 South, I can show you Barksdale, I can show you I-49 North, I can show you I-10 in New Orleans, I can show you the Calcasieu River Bridge in Lake Charles, I can show you the widening of I-12, I can show you the 3241 in North Shore that was promised 32 years ago, that you've been paying 4 cents for, that we have no money to build because of those bad decisions, but it's under construction and it's paid for. And there's one project left down in New Orleans, that's another $250 million. And so we have been on a journey since 2016 to right the ship and put us in the right direction. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have about any of the projects I just mentioned.
I have a question for clarity. So if we hadn't prepared going back into Baton Rouge, that's going to be reduced to one lane going towards 110 and one lane going towards I-10 east, right?
That's correct.
So the second part of that question is, for those of us that live in North Baton Rouge, that have the problem with the people riding the fast lane, that goes to 110, because you have maybe out of every 100 cars, maybe 10 that goes 110 on it. Waiting till the last minute in the construction zone to decide they want to get over to that one. How would that be prevented so people will know all the way back from Lobdell, to know, hey, stay in the left lane if you go on 110, stay in the right lane if you go on I-10, to prevent these accidents as well.
Great question. So much of what we have to do a better job with, and that this project is going to give us opportunities to do, is communicate to the public, both in terms of before you leave, from when you look at your map on your phone, because remember, our 511la.org gives you the same information that you get from Waze. In fact, they use SciFi data. We're all integrated. And then you have everything from signs on the highway system, those dynamic message boards, to interstate shields and pavement on there. And this is going to take some time for people to get used to, but they will figure it out. The other piece I will tell you is a great deal of the congestion you see today is created from merging and weaving in short distances. That creates the stop and go. It also creates the accidents. And the benefit of having reduced construction is that you have fewer options. And I know everybody wants to have a smorgasbord. This is like going to the shoe store. It's not a fun thing for me with my wife to go to the shoe store. I buy online black shoes, brown shoes, tennis shoes. But if I get all of these options, everybody's going to choose a different option in that same footprint. And that's where the chaos happens. And so part of this will allow for us to create a merge that's going to be a lot longer and a lot further instead of concentrating it in a short distance. Because that's when it happens. When you talk about the disruption on LA1, it's not the merge that happens right here. It's the merge that happens right on the bridge before you get over. If you can eliminate that, guess what? You don't have the disruption, and the compound of that disruption of your merge has a ripple effect of every car that follows you, and every car that follows you adds seconds. So if you eliminate this problem, you increase your throughput. And that's our challenge. We also want to recognize that more than that 1 in 10 actually goes north in the morning. And so that becomes the other factor, is you've got to use data. And most of us, I'm human, I do it too. I give you the data perspective of when I'm there. And I am on that bridge all of 4 minutes every day in the morning and 4 minutes in the afternoon. And I extrapolate that to everybody's experience on that bridge, and it's not the case. But we have data from on-vehicle equipment, we have data from cell phone usage, we have data from cameras, all of that stuff with all of the analysis that's necessary to do better predictive modeling in these footprints, and that's how we're going to manage it. We're going to do outreach and communication across the I-10 corridor, and we do that today. So if we're in a hurricane evacuation, guess what? We got signs lit up in Mississippi. I got signs lit up in Texas. I got signs going on I-49 North. And so we do that today, but if you're not in those spaces, you don't see it. We also know how to talk to truckers. You get on Mad Dog on the satellite radio. You're amazed at how many people, and if you hadn't heard it, almost every trucker is going to be listening to those stations. With in-vehicle equipment, when they go to rest stops, truck stops, way stations, and in between on Mad Dog to be able to communicate, here's the current delay on 10, you might stay on 90. That happens today. And so we're going to capitalize on it. A great question. Yes, sir.
Shawn, it is my belief that if DOTD has the money, if the money is dedicated to it, that you can build that bridge. My question is really for Congressman Graves and Congressman Carter's representatives. I read in the paper the infrastructure bill passed with trillions of dollars. A trillion is 1,000 billion. And then there's another bill that passed, a lot of environmental stuff, all that, another several $1 trillion. I'd like to know why $2 billion could not be dedicated to building a bridge across the Mississippi River. The bridge is not only a local problem, it's a regional problem, and it's a national problem. Because, when cars are sitting there just running in park there, it's an environmental issue. So I'd like to hear from the two representatives here exactly how did we let all of that go by and we didn't get $2 billion, which is a chicken feed compared to what has been doled out.
Well,
Not you. You can do it if you get the money, right?
let me put that in context for you, and I'm gonna let them answer the question appropriately. Because of the $6 billion Louisiana's getting, when that bill passed, it told me where I had to spend it. And I got $1 billion more than I would have gotten in the previous 5-year bill. And remember, I'm only gonna get 1/6 of that per year. And these legislators would vote to use 100% of that $1 billion over the next 5 years on that bridge. They would do that in a heartbeat, but to get it through the legislature, you gotta do more math than just these guys here. Now, the other half of that equation I will tell you is in that bill, $350 billion of it is in formula for various categories, very specific. $150 billion of it is in discretion. Various categories. Are we gonna apply for a discretionary grant? You bet you will. We absolutely will apply. We're gonna apply for as much as we're eligible to get. And we believe that we'll coalesce the support to be able to get funded. But without a set of plans, without environmental clearance, I can't go and say, hey, here's how much I need. So I just want to give you that context, and I'm going to defer to the congressional representatives that are here.
So the quick answer on the congressional side is that Congressman Graves didn't support that bill. And I can go into detail now or later about why he didn't support that bill. But the categories of spending, so that $2 trillion infrastructure bill isn't all roads and bridges, it's other stuff. The roads and bridges, as Secretary Wilson described, are by and large formula dollars. They're fixed in what they can be spent on. The discretionary dollars are all grants, they're competitive, and so the state of Louisiana is going to compete against the state of California for certain large pots of money for these mega projects. But by and large, most of those dollars are what's called formula dollars. There are silos of funding that go to bridges and highways and sidewalks and other transportation projects. So, but I don't want to get into a policy debate about why Congressman Graves voted against the bill, but he didn't support that bill.
The other thing I will point out is, and we see it all the time in Louisiana, is this delegation will say the most important bridge is this bridge right here in Baton Rouge. When I go to Lake Charles, they're going to say that most important bridge is out there in Lake Charles. For me, I want to build them both. And when you look at the number of mega projects that are upwards of $1 billion, every state's got 5 or 6 of them. And that $1 trillion project, I don't think that you're going to have this bridge be the #1 bridge in the entire country. I would vote for that. These elected officials would vote for it. But Congress isn't going to say that that's the #1 bridge in the entire country. I think if you look at the #1 bridge, there's a debate. It could be Calcasieu, it could be the Prince Bridge, it could be the bridge up in New York. So when you think about that $1 trillion, think about it around the entire country in terms of how it has to be spent. Outside of all of those formula dollars, that 2/3 of it is going to states to do specific types of project, as he said. This stuff is expensive. And to a certain degree, I probably would tell you, we probably overbuilt our infrastructure in this country. Because most of what that money is going to be spent in is taking care of what's already built. Look how old that intercoastal bridge was. I've got hundreds of bridges like that are that old. I got a 79-year-old bridge on the interstate. Do we build something new, or do you take care of what you built first and what you already had? That's a big debate in this business. And so I hear you. And look, we can build it. No, I won't.
They don't have to do anything.
I wouldn't agree with that. I would tell you that they are hugely involved in infrastructure and the policy decisions that we make. But again, we've got 6 members in Congress.
Can I talk?
I'm gonna let him respond to that person, then
No, I'm not gonna ask a question.
but he made comment back and forth. So,
I'll just get real brief. So first of all, in 2015, so the federal transportation budget occurs every 5 years. It's we just nickname for it as the highway bill. Every 5 years, Congress draws up the federal transportation budget. In 2015, Congressman Graves negotiated $500 million more for the state of Louisiana. That was new money, $500 million more for the state of Louisiana. And he was one of the co-authors of the mega grant programs that resulted in approximately $1 billion in new grant money to the state of Louisiana. So the congressional delegation is not off the hook, if you say. The congressional delegation has its shoulder to the wheel. Again, this infrastructure bill, I'm glad that I don't want to bore anybody with it. I'm glad to talk about it afterwards with you. But the infrastructure bill, Congressman Graves did not support that bill. He thought there were other ways to get money. Ultimately, though, we all want the same thing. We want more money. And in 2015, Congressman Graves negotiated and got more money for the state of Louisiana.
Can I follow up from Joey?
yes.
Okay, my name is Jim Owens, proud graduate of Brusly High School, 1965. But Joey, you're right, there's a lot of money. And I think that, first, let's clear it, it's the intra-coastal canal. The other thing is, I was alive when the new bridge was built. My mother was alive when the old bridge was built, the 190 bridge, and that was because they needed something to cross the river because you could not keep the trains going with ferries. Now, we have hazardous waste, both sides of the river, going right through here, and LSU, right by the dormitories. We need to think big about another train crossing before we have a disaster. And then we had the hearing, Rodney, across the river, and a lot of people couldn't go in Iberville Parish because of a chlorine leak at Dow Chemical. Now, I know where the money can come from. You have the strategic oil reserves. 5 of the 6 are located right at Choctaw Fields. They have filled these salt domes with oil. The oil was in there at $20 a barrel. Joe Biden sold it for $90 a barrel. Do the math. The money's here. The new bridge, a bridge over the Mississippi River to do the railroads to keep them out of populated areas is there. And I'm not picking on Darren Graves or anybody else, but this bridge and the infrastructure is not just a Louisiana responsibility or West Baton Rouge Parish or Shawn Wilson or anybody else. The money is there. I rest my case. Oh, another proud person that taught at Brusly High School was the mother of the Commissioner of Higher Education of the state of Louisiana, Kim Hunter Reed. And then this lady, I was fortunate to work with her at the Department of Education at Southeastern Louisiana University. So again, I'm a proud graduate of Brusly High School, and the smallest parish in the state has some people that are making a big difference, and I think we can make more of a difference. Thank you.
And our chief engineer was taught about Edmond's mom. We'll read that today.
Any other?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not being controversial. I just want to understand the logistics of everything. So we're doing the southbound. I'm impressed with the progress that's being done. It's actually pretty good. But once they finish the southbound, both northbound and southbound are going to be on that.
Northbound and southbound will be on that in 6 lanes, 3 going in each direction, and you will still have the full movement from I-10, and you will no longer need the flyover.
So that one bridge is going to have 6 lanes?
The new bridge will have 6 lanes.
You're talking about the intercoastal?
Yeah, the intercoastal. I'm sorry. I'm talking about yeah, I'm sorry.
So you're gonna have 4 lanes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I misunderstood. You're gonna have 4 lanes on the southbound bridge, but it's gonna be 2 in each direction until we build it. And then afterwards, you're gonna have more capacity with the 10-foot children, inside children of 8 foot.
Okay, when I was trying to imagine it, I thought, I thought you were gonna get
When
the
you say, hey, what
southbound.
about that bridge in Louisiana? I got
Yeah.
12,700 locations.
Yeah, I was working my way north. So while we have 2 lanes both ways on the intercoastal, they'll start, I guess the flyway on the other side of the new bridge.
That's correct.
So all that'll be going on at the same time?
That's correct. So this bridge, the intercoastal bridge, intracoastal, thank you for that correction. It's that on my notes, I just misspoke. That's gonna be finished in 23, and we're gonna start the process of demolishing the 2 bridges.
Okay.
And at the same time, for the year of 24 is when you're gonna have the tear down on the interstate. And then back in 25, you will have 6 lanes on the interstate, 3 in each direction. All of that traffic is gonna then be on the southbound lane, just like it's all gonna be on the southbound lane here. And then we're gonna rebuild all of that, and then you're gonna have 4 lanes of traffic, probably a year after you put everybody back on the southbound.
I work in Dallas, so it's not a problem for me, but my wife has to go into town. All right. No, I just wanted to get the logistics of how to do it.
Absolutely, great question.
Just a quick question for you. You talked a lot about the big bridges, big projects. What about the small bridges? Yeah, I know it's hard to, you only got so much money. You got a real hard decision to decide where you're gonna spend that money. A lot of little bridges in the parish here, Point B, and then Point B is 3 of them right now. It's in serious.
And so, great question. So, you know, the infrastructure bill is giving us $6 billion. 4.9 billion is the same thing we got 5 years before, over that 5-year period. I'm gonna get $6 billion going for the next 5 years. That extra billion, $1.1, $1.2 billion is primarily on bridges. And the Congress doesn't just give you a check. They will tell you, based on your bridge inventory, based on the reports that you gave us, you've got X number of bridges that are in poor or very poor condition. Those are the bridges that you're gonna do first with this money. And so of that $1 billion I'm gonna get, about 300 million is going on locally owned bridges that might have average daily traffic of 200. Might have 400 cars a day. The balance of that is going to go on state bridges that might have 60, 70,000 cars a day, 30,000 cars a day. Not only are we going to spend this extra money, but you've got the vehicle sales tax money that we're getting as well that's dedicated to some capacity to do some type of bridge work. And so when you look at the volume of bridges you have here in Louisiana, it's a challenge.